what was the first thought that came to your mind when you woke up this morning? Like, what was the first thought that was on your mind?
My son.
All right, tell me more.
So because
I don't have a bed around you.
No, I'm having exams and I have to wake up very early. And so he slept in the other room with my cousin. So the thought of him sleeping in a room next to mine without sleeping in the same room with me and just thinking it's really cold and I have to leave my son behind.
As even like the first thought I had this morning was actually wild. I was thinking about how, because I'm an avid rap listener, right? So I was thinking about how I was just comparing like older people who did music in Zimbabwe and like according to rappers like your Kendrick Lamar's, your Drake and Gigi. And I was just thinking about you had poets, prophets, philosophers, and the James Shimombe. And I was actually thinking like maybe people like James Shimombe were depressed and they're kind of soft. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bold Exchange. I'm joined by a farmer, organic farmer, environmentalist, or award-winning poet, a mom, Anori Manyuchi. No, she's not a traditional. Linda Gabriel, how are you doing?
I'm very good, and I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah. Tell me, where does it all start for you? Like, for me to actually understand your story and what you do, I need to get context. So tell me, what's Linda up to when she's 21?
It starts with the word. In the beginning was the word, so it was always poetry. I've been writing and performing poetry since high school. And most of my work with my poetry has been about highlighting and fighting for the plight of women.
All right.
So all my years, most people who know me, they don't even know that I'm into farming now. They still know me just as a poet. And it's through poetry that my work has evolved. You see, around 2018, that's when I started feeling a void within my work.
All right.
You would perform to an audience of maybe 1,000 people on an international stage, and you go back to your hotel room feeling empty. I didn't understand what was going on until I spoke to my mentor and he said, Linda Gabriel, you need to sit with your work again. Within our journey with my mentor, he had given me like sort of signs and clues of what would happen with my work. Like at some point, he said, at some point when you perform, people will nod their heads. You know, there's something happening with your poetry. At some point after a performance, people will ask for your CD or for your book. So there were stages that I looked forward to within my journey, and those I witnessed. But on this time, I didn't understand what was going on. So he asked me to sit with most of the work that has been really powerful and said, sit with it and see what's going on. And I printed out my work and I sat with my poetry. And it dawned on me that for me, words alone weren't enough. You know, we could get to 80 and still be activists on the plight of women. Then what? So,
No. I hear you. Like what I'm trying to ask is, okay, so why women specifically? Why didn't you? You know, some other people care more about dogs than they care about human beings out there. They'll be like, yo, now we are being activists towards, keep the dogs safe and stuff like that. Why women? And what's the story behind you saying, well, I want to actively stand for the plight of women?
The path chose me. I did not wake up. Like for me, there is no pattern of what I'm going to write. There's no schedule. But it's after the writing that you see the emerging themes in your work that it's about women. And it's also could be my background. I was raised by a single mom, by my grandmother, and many women around me. Aunts I know, strong women I know, mainly single mothers. And even if they're married, they've been battling with a whole lot of issues. So it happens organically.
All right.
That, then once you know, all you can do is then affirm and accept the calling. Why is it why is it I'm writing about women? Why is it I'm writing about women? To a point you're like, okay, I'm just gonna be writing about women's issues.
So what's when was the first time you got on a stage and you were like, I think I like it here? describe that first feeling where where the bug hits you, like, okay, I think I like this. Because you know how, like, back in the days, I come from an era where, like, some of us were called hippies and war, and then you know how Marasta hi-fi back in the day, where there was a lot of, like, a bit of cultural appropriation where people were trying to fit into spaces because they weren't authentically that. I mean, with
wanted
you,
to be relative.
Yeah, with you, when does it hit you? Like, you know what? I really want to do this.
So, January 2007, that's where my work took a shift. That's the first time I broke down on stage and I cried. That's when, like, the beautiful moment for me was that, because I had an issue with my mentor. His name is Charlie Duck. He's British. He had said to me the previous 2 nights, "Linda, I don't think you've started writing." And I was like, what do you mean? I'd been performing at Book Cafe, where people give you a standing ovation, they like your work. But here is somebody who's saying, "Linda, you haven't started writing." So he sat with me and says, what I mean is, I think you have stories to tell that you're not telling because you want to be relevant. You want to be like everyone else. Then he says, how many stepdaughters are in your shoes? How many daughters are being raised by their grandmothers, and you're not telling that story? And says, until you start telling your own story, then you'd have started writing. So I went back to my room, because we were on a workshop in Blawayo. I went back to my room and I wrote a new poem. And I read that poem the following day when we were doing presentations, and I broke down. And for me...
This was a Book Cafe?
No, this was in Blawayo now.
Oh, right. Yeah. And like, speaking of Book Cafe, right? Like, shout out to Mr. Brainwash. How important of an institution was it to the arts and cultural landscape for us? Because, like, I remember watching Chioniso perform at Book Cafe. I remember knowing that if someone hadn't, you knew the next big star that was going to be going mainstream from Book Cafe. How important was it for culture then?
Artists who have come on now without experiencing the Book Cafe, they might never know what that space holds. So I'm a Book Cafe baby.
All right.
I started off at Book Cafe. I was seen at Book Cafe. Everything for me. Then I ended up working for the Book Cafe here in Zimbabwe and working for the Book Cafe in South Africa. So I'm among the privileged who also got to work with Paul Brickhill from the Zimbabwean side of things and from the South African side of things. Book Cafe provided a platform for us where you could actually test the waters. Okay, I think I'm a poet, I'm doing poetry, but Book Cafe would then give you that chance, because there were afternoon events on weekends for young people, then there were evening shows. And for me, everything that I am now goes back to Book Cafe. Beautiful relationships I have with artists, it's from the Book Cafe. I can talk of Penny Yon, the bassist. She's an amazing organizer. I can talk of Ian White. These are the people that held our hands to grow up, to be where we are. My story of everywhere I've been, 26 countries in total,
all right,
can never be told without mentioning the Book Cafe. It was that space. It was home, away from home. You knew the Book Cafe was the space. Even if you had nothing to do, you could just end up at the Book Cafe, have a drink, connect, and create.
Like, you talk about, like, traveling 26 countries, like, that's like a lot of countries that, like, most of us will even imagine, right? So, I mean, what's the difference? And then you're writing in all these different spaces, and what's the difference between, like, what's the difference when you say, I'm putting pen to paper and I want people to read this poetry, and what's the difference between that and then when you jump on stage and say, yo, I want to perform this for my audience? Like, what do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy writing it and publishing, or do you enjoy jumping on stage in different countries and performing it in person?
My strongest my strength is performance.
All right.
So when I write, even my writing style, it's for an active live audience. So some of us struggle to transition within the COVID era where performances had to be recorded, then played for somebody else. So when I write, for me, it's always for stage. So I'm about to publish my books.
All right.
And my editors had to really work around my work to say, okay, this works for performance, but now for people to be reading, we need to edit A, B, C, D. I enjoy performance. For me, the stage is everything build up to the stage. So when I'm on stage, then I'm like happy, I'm at home, I'm comfortable.
So is there like a correlation between like the stage and book cafe? Because one thing I knew, right? Like I remember there's a like in my earlier days when I was like into artist management and stuff like that, I was trying to get this band booked for a certain show, and then someone asked me like, "Yo, have these kids that you want to book for this venue, have they filled up the book cafe before?" I remember Bashupa was being asked the same question, like you knew the benchmark that until you fill up book cafe and they start shutting people out. I remember I was there when there's a time when Japanese actually filled up book cafe before they graduated to the Jazz 105s and wow. So I'm saying, is there a correlation between the artist and the stage? Did the stage make the artist, or did the artist make the stage when it comes to the book cafe?
I think it's in two ways. Either you got mad, or you knew that this wasn't for me. And what Book Cafe did was, it was more of your playground. So you can't talk of HICC before you have tried your waters at the Book Cafe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So this is like your test to actually say, for you to get to D, have you passed through A, B, C? So people would know then the quality of your work as well, because Book Cafe was also about quality. So if you could fill that cozy venue with the people who actually paid, then you know you had potential.
In Nini, I actually liked the fact that it was like, you know how comedians have these comedy clubs where there are other comics who actually come and watch them. I like the fact that like it was a melting pot of journalists, artists, and fellow. So you knew that you had to put your like best foot forward because you understood that I'm performing to people who really are not trying to sugarcoat anything right now. They're telling me straight up. And you know, like there's some amazing people who came out of the Book Cafe. I remember one gentleman from Ojena, who's some of your favorite people that came from the Book Cafe?
There is, I met Takuma Fika the late.
All right.
He was an amazing bira player, and he also used to teach. Duduma Nenga, I experienced here at the Book Cafe. Women like Ruth Mbangwa, who remains my mom's favorite. Mukoma Tanga Wekwa Sando, Victor Kunonga, Andy Brown.
Yeah.
You know, for me, because as much as I was working there, I was also performing there. So I also had the privilege of making sure that the other artists who were also coming to perform were also on point. So I kind of have like the backstage story of getting to share a drink, getting to see somebody backstage before they've put up a show. Book Cafe taught us also to be professionals, to be on time, to respect our artists, even our artist space, to respect the craft. That's what Book Cafe did for me.
And how do we bring that culture back? Because there are no more stages like that. There are no more stages where you go, you test out your material, or you go and it's from a pure, you know, like in the digital era where someone can just say buy views and boost a post and it can get to the people and you can manipulate the hand of how good your artistry is. But now, you know, you had to be a certain caliber of artist to perform at a Book Cafe, at a Haifa. You had to have perfected and, you know, like gone through certain stages. How do we bring that culture back?
So there are two sides to this. There's always the developmental side of things, which is what the spaces are lacking. So Book Cafe was about developmental and then professionalism. So when we had afternoon events where we had poetry slam, where we had Sisters Open Mic, at Sisters Open Mic we were actually scouting who the next Tuesday, jazz musician, a young woman who can fill up that slot as an opening act for Dudu Manenga or for Chwaniso Maraire. So as long as we don't have development of arts spaces and initiatives, we all rushing too quick before our stew has actually simmered to put up an act. This is why you might find some of the artists may have a hit song, a hit poem, but then in the long run, it's not sustainable.
Okay. You said you do art that speaks to the voice, that speaks for women, right?
Yeah.
And let's just pause there for a bit. Let's talk about women, 21st century women. I come from a very traditional cultural family background. Can you say that you're impressed by the state of women and how women are carrying themselves out there, as much as you're an advocate for them? Because can you say that, well, you know what, I'm pleased with, I mean, we see what we see, we all have the same internet, we play on the same internet streets. Can you say that you're really proud of like the direction that women are taking currently?
Me being me, it leaves a lot to desire.
That sounds like an intro to a poem, like.
I think, I miss sitting with my grandmother and having a conversation going. I think we don't have these spaces anymore for young women to, whilst we are developing in terms of organizations that are, working to women empowerment and all these things, for me it still also comes back to Ubuntu.
All right.
What is it that we're doing as women? There has been so much hate if you look around. Personally, some of the help I've gotten, which I expected to get from fellow sisters, it's actually been from brothers.
All right.
As much as internet is there and we seem to be getting an education, we're still in spaces where women are still poor. There's still a lot of abuse going on, child-headed families. There's still violence against women, and also women has also been perpetuating violence. We have women who are abusive to their partners, but these stories are not told because it is difficult for men to be in spaces where they can actually say, you know what I mean? So we also have our own dirty linen that we're sweeping under the carpet as women, things that we are not addressing, and we don't have also safe spaces. As much as we've been creating safe spaces for women, we've been neglecting the boy child. So there also does, whilst I talk about women do not live in isolation. So you find in my poetry there is that about women, and there's also the stories of good men I've encountered and wanting for spaces to be there for also men to just also be vulnerable and say,
I totally get you, and you seem like a cultural and traditional woman. And do you think that there is space for women in this male-dominated world that we live in currently? Do you think that there is a space for women to actually coexist with men currently in the spaces that you're moving in, whether it's in business?
You know what, as much as there are challenges, I want to think we got feminism wrong somewhere along the lines where we took it from the European side of things and brought it down. But let me take you back.
All right.
Our women have always been powerful.
True.
At home, for stuff to happen, it's your mother. Many people will tell this. For our house to be painted, my mom would have said a word or two to my father that, hey, it's time. The house needs this. The children need this. Women run the show. But I think if you are a boss at work, it differs when you come back to your community. You're a sister, an aunt, you're a wife, you're a mother. You wear so many hats. And I think we've been wearing the wrong hats on some occasions.
Wakuda kutachira pasiripo. What's like he's because like that's the other thing I actually wanted to ask earlier on. Like you're Linda Gabriel and you are what's your mtupo? I was actually shocked.
Masigede. Maswand.
Oh, okay,
like
okay,
Mira Shumba right up. And I take pride in my totem and my culture as well. So I'm that.
Yeah, like you know, like when I was just looking. Currently, where are you based?
I live in Kutama, in the village.
Oh yeah, Kutama, Zimba. Oh yeah, like
Yes.
the funny thing is that like originally my family is originally from that Zimba Serima area. Like originally, like I'm talking.
Wejira.
Where's your? No. So you know, and we're talking about this whole the plight of women, right? I wanna take it back a bit. Because I wanna paint a picture here. Now you know I wanna where's your head at when you start hearing funny smells and you just having this morning sickness and and like the first day you figure out that you're pregnant and you're about to become a mom. What's going through your head? What's the situation there? What happened? Like, tell me that story.
Do you want to make me cry?
I think guys have got tissues, right?
Oh my word, it's the beautiful feeling ever. My son was given to me when I was 37.
Wow.
So at a time when my parents were also losing hope, you know, when you're the child who's always one country here, next country here, I'm moving to Malawi, I'm moving to South Africa, I'm in German, you know, when your people are almost lost, like, okay, my mom was like, I'm going to die without, you know, touching, I mean...
And
you know, it's like, and you know how it is also with societal expectations that it's a certain age you're supposed to be marrying and have a child. But I'm telling you, when I figured out I was pregnant, it was beautiful. I had been praying for a son.
right.
And I already had a name for a son. So even when I was doing my gynecologist visits, you know, so when we got to gender reveal, he was a son. I was like, look, I knew because I'd prayed hard for a son and I was given, it's a beautiful story. My son is called Safiri.
Okay.
Safiri is from Swahili, safari. Safari means travel or a journey. Safiri means the act and experience of being on a journey. Inzendo, irwendo.
Preach. Go ahead.
Kufamba.
Famba inaro show.
So yeah, man. And for me, I didn't even experience morning sickness, eh?
Serious?
No, my son behaved. I was like, look, dude, we live in Jimba. You can't be wanting pizza or getting sick or what. There was none. So I almost ate everything. I was okay. I was busy. I was hectic. Went to the bank on a Wednesday. I was delivering on Thursday. On Tuesday, I was back at the bank with him. And CBZ people were like, what? Linda, give this child a break. I was like, he's a genuine.
And the first time the nurse then cuts the umbilical cord and then gives them to you, how beautiful is that experience and what's going through your mind then when you're like looking at this innocent, pure life that you brought to the world?
So I wanted his father's nose on him. So when I look at him for the first time, I'm like, he has my nose. No ways. I'm telling you. Then I started crying. But for me, it was the nose first. I was like, oh my God, he's got my nose. I wanted his father's nose on him. But yeah, and for me, it's that you carry something human and now it's actually in your hands. Oh my word. I don't know. I mean, I think we should just have a conversation with women on what their first experience is on.
So a quick question, like, so, you know, with us creatives, we're very liberal minds, you know, the way we think and the way we can entertain ideas, have this idea now and then get rid of it later on and stuff like that. How did motherhood change you from the way you were moving? I mean, you've been traveling, you're exposed to different cultures, different things, and just being in the arts on its own at that time is deemed rebellious. And so we have a blurred vision for what we call rules. So how does motherhood change you? And is that when the transition happens?
Farming did change me first. So moving into farming sort of grounded me. You know, when you work the land, you are taught to be patient.
Patience.
You are waking up every day. You are religiously doing something to get results. So in that time, farming was grounding me. Like, you can't just get on the bus and go to Zambia because you have things that you're doing. So poetry, farming into my son. So when my son comes, I've already calmed down, I'm chilled. You know, there are times when I was in the country and I would hear that Victor Kunonga is playing and I'll be like, edgy. Hey, how do I get kwa Victor Kunonga? What do we do? You know? But now, I've been in the village for the last 5 years. I haven't gone out to a performance in the evening. The only time I've done that was last year in April when I took my son out for Hope Masike's jazz event at Alliance Francaise. But we're talking of 5 years where I'm chilled, I'm calm. I'm like, I don't want noise around me. So then motherhood just brings me more to be very, very grounded. Now when I think about my life, look, I'm even worried about just leaving him at home to go to school. So now my son comes first. When I've gone to work, they know, okay, you know, so I think there's more to my life, because when I think of my son now, I'm like, okay, there has to be generational wealth for this young man. So what is it that I'm doing now? Even my going back to university to do my master's, it's also for me saying, look, there's something for this young man. So it's no longer about Linda Gabriel. It's always about Safiri.
So you moved into sustainable food development. Did that come from the need and the drive to always want to empower women? Because I mean, looking at the job that you're doing out there, I don't want to lie to you, it's some of the most amazing work I've seen being done by an individual in this country. When I always tell people at the office that no matter how bad we don't see eye to eye with, I will never knock you or try knock the way you earn your living and the way you are actually literally putting food on people's tables. Like, where does that drive and passion come from?
So it goes back to the backstory of my poetry making me have a void. So I get to a point where I'm like, okay, it's poverty here that needs to be worked with for us to start tackling and dealing with some of the women's issues. Words alone weren't enough. I could get to 80, still be an activist and talk about women's issues, protest in the streets, put up shows. But at the end of the day, then what? There have been people behind me, before us, whom I thought with what they stood up for, they could have amplified their voices and have tangible results and impact. But look, I understand we are gifted differently. And I said, Linda Gabriel will be remembered for words and will be remembered for action. So from then I said I wanted to be an act of change. So, kana trukuti kunze kunenzara as women, what is it that we're doing about it? So I said farming. If we could just feed, because we have so many issues that women go through simply because they want to feed their children. Kotkambo Visanzara in the equation, where we're saying if a woman is well fed and her children are well fed, guess what? There is surplus for that woman to sell. And when there is surplus for that woman to barter with your neighbor. I barter eggs with cow dung because I don't have cows. So on a good day with my neighbor, I can barter eggs and I can get milk. So here we haven't even talked about money. We are saying, I've got beehives, we'll have our own honey, we'll have our own beeswax, we'll make our own soap. From the herbs and from the wax, we're making soap and honey. And from that, we go to the extent of making our own candles from the beeswax. So already, we have
An
reduced.
ecosystem, you have an ecosystem just going there.
We're owning the ecosystem where we're producing our own meat, we're producing our own vegetables, we're producing our own staples, and then value addition at household level. I'm not asking for bigger things here. I'm saying at a household, what is it that you're doing with what you have? Water that you're washing your dishes and your clothes. We water our bananas because bananas can survive with soapy water. So here we are. We don't even need to use fresh water for watering our bananas. So what is it that you're doing with your leftover food? Composting.
So let's talk numbers here now, right? How many, because I'll get into details of what you're doing, but how many people have you mentored and taught and, helped set up? Because I know you got a department that sets up the beehives. We're going to get into that as well. But I want to know how many people have you impacted so far, as in imparting skills and, because my maze. So I mean, you're like, yo, what are you trying to do? You're like, this person is working in the garden.
Jigsaw.
Yeah.
So at home, I run an apprenticeship program for young women from less privileged background.
Right.
And it's also part of my giving back to the community. It's young women from Norton. Part of my growing up, part of my tuition was paid by an orphanage drop-in center called Tsungirirai. So Tsungirirai is like my other second home. Right. And once you in that space, you become a bigger sister to someone. Then there's a little sister, there's a little brother. So what we've been doing with Tsungirirai is our focus as a country has been more on academics. But it's not really everyone who's academically gifted. And take note, we learn differently. Then manakana arinerera, especially mskana, whoever that they are living with, most likely they become the helper at home. So they have to do chores on top of 11 subjects at school. So then if you bring in sexual reproductive health, you're already thinking this child is already a school dropout before they've even written their exams. So what do? We say we learn by doing. So you come to me, we learn permaculture, we learn sustainable living on the go. And what we've been doing with my friends in the US is we then secure a small musha for you, we fence it, we build a 2-roomed cottage, and we install a small income generating project for you. Because the idea is to leave a young woman fully empowered. She has her own land, her own house, and she's producing her own vegetables and maybe selling chickens. Most of our young women vanofimbirwa chicken slice,
So padzogorere ipapo munhu waMwari. Ipapo chaipo padzogorere ipapo.
Most of our young women vanofimbirwa
chicken slice,
pizza, Mayfair. But come to think of it, so if you're coming from a space like mine where you've learnt the importance of what you put in your body, that's not to dent on anyone's business, but you know what's health and what's not healthy. So if a guy is coming to you and saying, ndokutengera pizza, you're like, look, I grow organic vegetables. Ndakaguta, what is it that you're offering? So young women, avachashandiswa for little things, just carrots, dangling carrots. I want when a guy comes to one of my kids that I've mentored, ngauye nemota. Ashiti baby izindo zvandokwanisa kukuitira, because we're saying muskana out ndine musha ndrukurima. So what value are you bringing besides kusangana and have an ice cream date?
I totally get you. And like I was actually talking to my partner the other time, and we're talking about I was contemplating the idea of moving to the rural area, because us in the CBD got this thing thinking kuti kurarama kwazvima kutama kwakasara and stuff like that. Yeah, you know what I mean? So what, and I actually think that's where the future is, when you look at how you have cleaner oxygen, cleaner water, you've got a peace of mind, you're like, it's just
birds chirping.
What are some of the pros of actually just unplugging and going off grid? I'm not sure if you're off grid, but just unplugging and living in the rural.
It's serene, it's solace, it's a place. I cannot stand Harare. Like when you're home, like what you're saying, look, we have issues with pollution in the city. We've got issues with waste management. We've got even issues with noise pollution. Your neighbor is playing this other musician, the next door is playing someone else. But when you are out there, you can hear your neighbors, but their noise doesn't really interfere within. When I'm at my mother's house, when I go to the left side of the house, there's something going on there, to the right, to the back, and to the front. And for me, it's just also gives you time to calm down, to like slow down. When you're looking at settling, I think in the cities, there's also just pressure of, look at how expensive vegetables were during the COVID era.
True that. Like COVID really told me that, we really need to shift. I think after COVID, that's when I actually came to the thought of like, I need to go off grid.
I mean, that's the way to go. The cities are overpopulated and there's no longer space. Look at how big spaces are in the rural areas, and you have plenty of land to actually experiment. And if we are actually going to end hunger, we need to be dealing it from a household level.
And okay, so tell me one thing. The fascination with bees, how did you come to begin to do that?
So when you're studying permaculture or sustainable farming, everything is in relation with everything. And for life to happen, it has to have a healthy ecosystem. And what happens within a healthy ecosystem, that they are living organisms that play a vital role in what we're doing. Right. So bees are doing pollination. From pollination, they're creating honey that comes into our tea, honey that we make our soap with. So this is, and all I have to do at home is plant the right flowers. That's it. Most of the things that you never see now in towns, you will find them at Kutama. Wakapesra kona majinyu 15 kana 10 rini at one space. Butterflies, bees, almost, or even just birds chirping, they're becoming extinct in urban cities. It's because we are not doing the right things. So once you start knowing what lives in an ecosystem, you will even know the importance of ivu, muivu, munofemwa. They are living organisms that we might not see with our eyes, but are actually healthy to the environment and to soil health.
I actually wanted to ask something when you were talking about how you guys create a certain space for the guys you're mentoring and stuff like that. Is this more like Fumvudza?
Fumvudza is only part of it, because the bigger picture of Fumvudza is climate smart agriculture, where you're using maximum use of land and resources and doing less work in the long run.
All right.
The challenge with Fumvudza is, for that to work, for that to be successful, it's about precision. You can't just do it this year and leave it there. No.
It has to be a continuous.
Fumvudza starts on the day you harvest.
All right.
What are you doing with your mashanga, with your stocks? What are you doing to the soil until to the time we plant? But now people who do Fumvudza for the sake of just doing it as a program that has been, rolled out.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. You have to live Fumvudza. It has to be. So in growing your vegetables and your grains, you then implement Fumvudza. And then you start planting trees. You start attracting bees. Then you do a water bath. Birds start drinking water from there. Put rocks here and there, lizards will start coming. So all these ways that you're doing is you are creating a micro environment. For instance, when you have lizards, they will eat some bugs that are supposed to be eating muruo wako mu garden. So naturally, you have solved issue ya kujirwa murio by just creating a natural environment that allows lizards. But everything we have in the environment, we are actually supposed to be friends. So tikaona nyoka, tudakurova. If we see lizards, manyisa. If we see this, but these are all friends of the environment. Snakes will eat on makonzo. And that's it. So it's, once you start understanding how the ecosystem works, then kuti, we as humans have been the culprits of destroying the environment. So where we no longer see birds chirp, or we no longer hear birds chirping, see butterflies, see bees, it's what we've been doing. A lot of synthetic chemicals have been put into the system. So whilst you are spraying your chibagi, it will work for solar, right? But you're not consciously thinking of what it will do to another element within the environment. Bees will become extinct.
So tell me something. What are some of the challenges that you are facing in this project that you are actually embarking on? What are some of the major, if like I know I've got like major stakeholders watching right now. Like, what are some of the challenges that you've been facing when it comes to growing your project and scaling up and all that?
So one of the things I'm really needing is a bigger piece of land so that we can scale up. So right now, with my interns, my apprentices, I can only take a few because they live in my own house, which means we don't have a boarding house.
All right.
So the idea is, for me, what was most important is getting started and showcasing what's possible on a 1 acre piece of land. It's difficult when you have a dream and it's still on paper and you're not practicing. But where I am at now, I've proven that this can work.
Okay.
Where we need to go now, my biggest challenges, I wouldn't call them challenges, but the biggest things that are coming up now is Linda Gabriel needs a bigger piece of land.
Okay.
Linda Gabriel needs to partner with the right people. Linda Gabriel needs to build a proper vocational school where from 2-3 girls a year, we can talk about training 20 young women from the community. That's the space I want to be. I want to be in a space where we're running a farm from processing, packaging, harvesting, planting, my tractors, to that stage where we know grade A is going to Belgium, grade B is going to 11 dogs, grade C is going to, that's where I want to be.
And how much impact did you travel in the world, and what did you see out there that said, you know what, there's no place like home? Like, what did you see when you traveled over 29 countries? Like,
people have got no access to land like we do. I'm telling you, when I tell my friends that I'm a farmer and I'm doing it on a 1 acre, they're like, what? Linda, you are rich. Look, in Berlin, people do funny things on their balcons, right? Pot plants. This is what they have and they're trying. You know, now we're going to lateral and vertical farming, where we're trying to install gardens on walls because people don't have land. And here we are with huge spaces of land. Believe you me, if I'll do this again, I'll do it again, over and over again. And word that I've always told my people is, if you can, look for land. Also look biblically, wars that happened or conflicts that happened, they were about land. Because land for us, Dionaka, that's the inheritance that you would leave to your children. So even when you go back to colonialism, it's been about land, right? So if you start understanding as a young person what land means, I mean, out there, people might want to go, but I'm telling you, water your grass here and see if it doesn't become green.
And you know, like speaking about green grass and the land, right? You are a very big advocate for people eating organically and healthy. Tell me why that is and why it's so important for people to actually go organic. There's actually now some brands that I actually don't consume because sugar actually takes a while to even just come out of my system.
Yeah.
So, like, why is it important to go organic, especially in this day and age? Because even like the ginger, Eriko, do you know, like the funny thing, this ginger I can now, like, yes, people are selling each other like you like, you know, I couldn't even like go through a piece of Tsangamizi because it used to be that potent. This time, I mean, the ginger no wonder people
ginger light.
Like, so why is it important for people to go organic?
So health matters, right? If you look at the number of chronic illnesses that we have, it's things that our grandmothers really didn't struggle with. Even the whole issue on obesity, you know, it's also in the foods that are refined that we're really taking. And for me, the adage is, let your food be your medicine. So if you start putting in right things in your system, you also see chances of even just getting a flu, you know, tummy aches, headaches, your chances of being diabetic, they already lessen. So look at So for instance, also another thing is when we don't know nutritional value of what's in food, then we have issues. When I do my trainings, I tell wanambuya utano kuti ajika mutsine ne ajika bonongwe akafanana ne munhu ajika nyama, right?
All right.
But nyama yakuya inana gout ka?
Yeah.
Mutsina una. But nutritional value of these, they all have protein. But because atiskuziva, and with also our oral tradition, our indigenous knowledge systems, some of these things were not really documented that well. But when you do it over time, system, so you don't even know, you might not even know kuti mutsine unorapa. Takazoziva early 2000s, HIV and AIDS, when it was an issue. Now that's when, when we were HIV positive, you're supposed to re-look of what you're eating. Takunzi dzokera kuma indigenous food, a wild muriwo. But these were already the muriwos that our mbuyas knew. So come to think of it, derere rinorapa. Nasi majika derere. Mubora une protein yakawanda, mangwana majika mubora, kuswera mangwana pane munyeve, pane mutsine, pane bonongwe. So you already have 5 days, right? Pova pazonzi beans, maani zuarechi 6, mashija emu cassava, and you look at sweet potato leaves. Yes, miriwo that our grandmothers used to do. So when people talk about being vegetarian and going vegan, I think our communities were already like that. Because beans, vegetables, meat then here and there, nyama yaiwanika, but it wasn't an issue. Yakuti families
want meat
every day.
Yeah.
No, so now we're eating more meat and that's more gout. Our children don't even know vegetables. They don't know these things. So you look, sadzare white, it's all sugar. That's all that there is in. But if you look at mapfunde or rojio or munga, that's high fiber. Right? So you find kuti sadza white to charge gomo because you want it to fill your stomach. But remunga kana regio, you don't go gomo on that because it fills you up quickly and it stays longer in your stomach. Easy on your gut system. My chances are go a constipation with this mashoma. You get it? So once we start understanding nutritional value in the foods as well, it's even easy to make sure kuti. But it also goes back to what am I doing with Safiri now? What am I introducing him to? Because it becomes difficult when he's a young man to say, hey, young man, you need to be eating indigenous food, you need to be. No. So from an early stage, he knows muruone dovi, he knows rice rene dovi, he knows porridge remapfunde. You know what I mean? So for him, white sadza, kanataenda kwa gogo, kanatashanya, that's like exotic. Chinwo chinyowan, but munu arkutokura.
With the actual
exactly,
and like you mentioned something very very interesting when you said that people weren't told or they weren't told this is important, whatever, right? So my question is, how important is the stories that we are telling as Africans, and how important are the African stories that we're telling? Because there are so many Eurocentric stories that have been told that for you to tell an African story, it will sound blasphemous. I'm sure you get my drift. Like, how important are the African stories that we need to tell to our people?
It begins with us and us right now. And if we don't tell these stories now, we are headed for. I was gonna use some swearing words, but it will remain a distorted story of us as Africa. Your story has to be told authentically by you yourself. So I have to tell my story now. When Safiri tells my story, it's different from how I'm telling it now. It will be, my mother did this women, my mother did this, my mother did this. It's not from a space where I am doing this because of this, and you are touching on things that makes me emotional. Safiri might not be able to echo the same sentiments when he tells my story. So if you have a story to tell, or that you want that story to be known, It has to be now.
No, I totally get you, right? Like, and you know, you look at how even some of the media that we're consuming and stuff like that, like, you know, you have people who can tell you, kuti, you have people who can actually tell you, kuti, so after Prince Ningi, after King Charles, Prince Ningi and Prince Ningi's child can't actually be the king because of A, B, C, D. And these people can't even tell you, like, Nyakutumbura, their dad. Like, they can't even tell you their dad's mother's genealogy, you know what I mean? So, I mean, was that a deliberate effort for when these stories are told so that, like, to... And the funny thing, it seems to be Africans who only do not value their trade. Because if you go on the Indian route, they actually know their history well.
Even
And their
biblical.
stories, like everywhere else, people know and they hold their story dear. They can grab your innovation, but
you're touching on a very sensitive matter. It goes back to, you know, when you want to cripple someone, it's kill their way of living, their spirituality and everything that they believe in. So brainwash them, bring something new that you say, this is good. So for instance, we had our ways of worshipping, we had our own ways of living together with everyone, right? Mwana we mungangari mwana wako, right? But when colonialism comes, it takes what's ours, brings in what's theirs, and then they place high value on what's theirs. So that, you know, once you cripple somebody's spirituality, way of living and everything about them, you are able to own them. You know, you're able to say jump and then they say how high. You see, I was surprised when I went to Europe for the first time in 2010. When I was there as an artist, I was teaching poetry and theater to kids who were around 8-7 years old. So already their main subject was theater and drama, not English, mathematics, geography, or history, right? So look, here we are learning another people's history, the French Revolution, right? Exactly, but we are not talking of Satange Dzinza of my clan.
True.
Sekuru wangu Muyera Shumba vakabva nekupi vakarora ani vakazorora ani. I'm Malawian, right? Saka vakazosvika sei kuZimbabwe. That history we don't know about.
And how and what bylaws were there and what's the bureaucracy along the way and who harbored them, who helped them. This, you know, like
exactly. And Haku kuzoti Gabriel, you know. So these are. So I think what we, the living ones, can do right now is to preserve what's already there and create new things. So ndikakwanisa kuziva kuti Safiri ndi Mofela akaberekwa na Tulani akaberekwa na Edmund akaberekwa na Ningi. We need to go back pana Edmund and find out what he knows so that we know dzinza remwana kuti rakafamba sei. Handiti muri kupaona. So we end up marrying each other. Budi na budi, because baba wakaita vanauko, baba wakaita uko. Because all these stories are not told, they are not recorded in our families. So there might be another Gabriel who just looks like me and we end up like, oh no, you're my father's child. But, you know, so we need to find ways of archiving and telling our stories. Kutot Iowa, my father had 2 sons and a daughter. Inini ndazogumira apa, but my brothers are taking the Shumba's feather. Kwana ningi. But tidzoka kubuntu. Vana sekuru vaigara padare nezvikomana zvidiki vachipiwa mazano. And the girls will do the same with vanambuya, vanatete as well. So this is some of the places we need to, if we still have access, to sit with these women.
I feel like the access is there. It's just people are not intentional. Because I feel like, you know how these days, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was saying, you know how these days we're letting your iPads and Wi-Fi raise your kids. At a young age, you know, like because of like how demanding probably life is currently, like you just give your kid an iPad, play Baby Shark, and then so I think it's people need to be deliberate and intentional about how we are moving.
So this was also the advantage for me of raising Safiri in the village. He doesn't have much access to this. He plays ngoma, he plays wosho. This is a kid who's like 22 months old now. Right. So you would say, these are my neighbors, Mombes. So he says, Ma, don't you wear? Mo, mkaka. Ma, mo, mkaka. He's actually asking for milk, pamombe. He's experiencing that. He knows kumazwarovira takwenda kumbudzi. He has that. So it's in that as well that how are we raising our children? Right now, my son doesn't know English. He knows Shona and Chichewa. I say these are his basic foundation. Go this, I want this, I want. I don't want him to feel uncomfortable around my relatives when they speak Chichewa. So he knows his first mother tongues are Shona and Chichewa, and that's we are. He has plenty of time to learn English elsewhere. You know what I mean? So how is he going to interact? Chikomana chekumombe. Chinengi chifanongi chitutara Shona nema elders emu village, right? I'm setting that for him, So I think it's also in our choice of, what are we doing with our own. But I mean, every parent will have their own style. We are not saying.
Oh, yeah, the parent. Yeah, true. Yeah. So tell me, what are the 5 things that you actually love about this country?
Lend.
Thank you. It's been the Bold Exchange. If you were pissed off, we actually did a good job. If you're impressed, we actually did an even better job. This has been the Bold Exchange. I'm out.